Good evening and welcome back to another edition of Beyond the Backstage Pass. I am your host, Vince Edwards. You may know me from Sound Image Productions. I also have a couple closed roadie groups on Facebook, one called Death by Loadout and another called The Backstage Pass. Come check us out. This evening with me, a wonderful, incredible human being, really my best friend in the whole world in many ways, all the ways. He's sitting in for the great Kyle Thomas. He's off doing some stuff, hooking up Janet Jackson in our shop in Southern California and getting that tour already. And so we've got the one, the only loudspeaker, designer, legend, friend of all, man, Bernie Broderick. How are you, my brother?
Pulled me out of the mothballs again, didn't you?
I love you so much, dude.
Are the batteries even still good in that thing?
So funny. I did a show that, I don't know, was that a live show we did the other day, or was that with Scott? I was sitting here having a show with, I think, Scott Perlman, you know, a dear friend.
Yeah.
And he was visiting off a schedule, so we just like sit the hell down, let's do our thing, you know. And I'm pretty sure somewhere about halfway through, I lost all ability to hear and speak because somebody decided I didn't need batteries. So, like, you know, you don't fight the wave. You just like, okay.
Yeah. Well, see, I'm still running on lead acid too, right? Like,
old school.
Yeah, we got no lithium up in this machine here at all, man.
You just need your water topped off every so often.
Yeah. You put the jumper cables on me. Get them on set. Get them on set.
I totally love that. How are you, my friend? It's so good to see you.
Oh, good to see you too, man. Yeah, I'm good. Damn this weather, though.
Well, so, you know, I get it, but and it's a little chilly. But, you know, I will take the cold, gray days with the rain over the windy days that are cold.
Yeah.
And you don't get the benefit of a little water rinsing off the giant parking lot and all of our, you know what I mean? Like,
it's all relative, isn't it?
Yeah, so I'm super cool with the rain part. And, you know, it's April showers. We're going to.
Yeah, but it's just like it's cold. It's been colder the last couple of days, and I remember it being all winter.
Yeah.
You know, it's just bitter cold out.
Yeah, we got some weird weather going on,
Yeah.
but, you know, you're a tough guy.
I know.
You got this.
I know, I got this.
We found ourselves talking about weather.
Yeah, I'm talking about the weather.
Two old men in the park.
Yeah. Things aren't getting any better here.
Damn weather.
No, it's good. Been keeping busy, and you know, summer's coming, so I've got projects I'm working on. You know, getting some stuff ramped up. You know, we've got trade shows coming up in the summertime that I want to get to, and I want to be ready with some prototypes and some new things, and you know, just balancing the kind of, you know, it's a difficult position to be in, because when you're the same person who's being creative takes a lot of time.
I imagine.
Right? Because there's a ton of trial and error that occurs. You think of something, you think this is the way it works. When you try it, it doesn't work. That's scrap. You start over. You know.
Yeah.
And then you're also the same person that has to build the stuff that's already vetted.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point.
Yeah. So you keep switching gears, and you know, one minute you're like, you know, you're Picasso in your own head. And the next minute you're a drone, basically just punching out things that you really actually do know how to create, right?
Right.
So it's tough to switch gears.
I imagine.
And it's tough to find the time when it's appropriate to be one or the other two.
Sure.
So, but I'm learning as I go. Did a bit of expansion. I actually saw one of the big boxes that came in today.
I did see that.
Yeah. So moving into the wonderful world of CNC machines. And so I picked up. Well, I had one, but I actually bought two more.
Damn.
From a gentleman. Yeah. And so they arrived today, and that's going to allow me to, you know, hopefully at least double down on what I can produce, because right now the limitation is me as a person.
Sure.
So I've got a few things that I can do automated on CNC, and hopefully, you know, I can have that thing whirring away and buzzing metal and doing stuff while I'm over doing something else. So just trying to get the productivity up is what I'm trying to do.
Sure. No, that's, like you said, a one-man operation. First of all, let's correct you. You said something at the beginning, something about creativity. I know, but I don't do that. I'm not creative. I'm hands-on. Not, man. I can't do a stick man. It would look wrong. Give me a pen. I'll show you.
Give him a pen.
Like a falling down stick man. That is not what I do. I do music, man. But, my ears work better. I'm more cerebral. But I've always said about you, and the fact that you are very creative, and that there's these two lanes, and I've always, marveled at that. And, there's some great results of your brain spazzing out and coming up with stuff. I feel like my job is to throw some weird shit in your front of you, and you go, oh, I could do that better.
I just did something there last week.
And then you just come out with some magical stuff.
Yeah. It's like he came over with some clamps and things and stuff, and we want to do this and we want to do that. And I'm going, well, I think I can make you the parts that will allow you to do this correctly.
They're talking about a kind of a version of like an Aztec clamp.
Yeah.
But a way more beefy, secured version of an Aztec clamp that we had you kind of knock out.
Right.
Yeah.
And allowed you to confidently hang speakers over people's heads.
Exactly.
And while not interfering with the clamping mechanism.
Yeah, the machining you did on that work was extraordinary. It's spotless, perfect, and unfortunately we didn't get a chance to employ him on that gig, but we will.
Yeah, you will. I think it's a utility part that you'll just have kicking around, and when the
Absolutely.
comes, yeah.
Absolutely.
So we've got some. The audience needs to know that I come in and you hand me a card.
Why do they need to know that?
And because I'll say things that I sometimes point back to you and say.
Let's tell them the whole truth then.
Yeah.
So if you
I
get
should
a card,
have the card in advance.
He gets a card.
The truth is that I should have studied the card like an hour ago.
You got it like 10 minutes ago, but it's just some thoughts of things that have transpired from last week.
Yeah.
And some things
cool.
that, folks we want to thank, like last week's guest, or in this case, we've done 2 shows since we were here last, so we'll talk about both. And then I give cards to him about the shots we want to call, because I write the show, so I have a sense of when they'll call, and they're like verbal cues, so he'll drop in some stuff with tonight's guest, like, I'll talk to tonight's guest about some of the artists he works with, and as he hears those names, he'll drop photos, and it's like that. So it's a division of labor, so, we can...
It's kind of almost like being creative.
No. Do not like that.
He says, I refuse to accept that.
Not like being
I refuse to accept any mention of creativity.
Because then I will end up with it. By the morning, I'll have a new hat on.
It's the modern C word.
I'll be the manager of creativity, and I'm going to kill myself. So I got enough hats. I'm trying to just be good at what I am supposed to do right now.
So let's blow through these notes here, and. Because there's a couple of cool things here, of course. You want to say thank you to Maxie Williams.
Maxie Williams is badass. He came on the show. He was such a sweetie about it. And, he shared all of his good stuff. And he's just done some amazing things. It was absolutely wonderful to have him on. He's an exceptional guy.
And, of course, as you mentioned, you had Scott Perlman here and jumped in on that. And it was great to have him here.
Scotty Perlman came. I guess he was, he's over in Indiana, 40 acres out there with his wife, his lovely family. And little Jack Bassett. Hi, Jack Bassett. Hope you're feeling better. His puppy. Who's suffered some recent health setbacks, but he cruised through. First, he dropped down into Tennessee and visited some of the guys. Went over by Jim Risning. I always shit on his name. Rizgnin. Jim's place.
Yeah. That's
Jim's place, who I believe is going to be on the show in the middle of next month, and. Then he jumped out here to visit with me and my brother and play around on some consoles and hanging. It was absolutely wonderful. While I had him here, I imposed on him if he'd sit on the set and talked with us for a little bit. So he did that. We are booked up into the middle of May, so I will air that the first available date. I'm going to put up the Scott Perlman show. It was absolutely perfect. It went amazing. It should, because he's a dear friend, and we just kind of talked. It was one of those weird shows where I didn't even get into the cards. I literally just sat here and
went for it.
Yeah, for an hour. It was lovely.
So you mentioned he's got 40 acres, and I'm Canadian, so I don't know if I'm maybe tapping on my own world, but I just wanted to know, straight up question: did he get it turned around? And do you know what the F I'm talking about?
You're going to have to ask Scott that, man.
Scott, did you get it turned around?
Hey, and by the way,
you got 40 acres.
Zachy, what happened to Devo Puss, buddy?
Oh.
Devo Puss didn't make it into the show.
Oh.
And it makes me sad. So, and he had a hat and everything. He got his Devo. All right, next show.
They're coming for that hat.
All right, well, I tell you, in the old roadie days, if I would have got a call like that from my artist, I would have ripped down through here in my little black clothes. So, not that that's a hint or anything. that we should run in and do some roadie shit.
Yeah, run in and do some
We don't
roadie
really
shit.
need to do anything like that or nothing.
Here he comes. Here he comes. He's running in to do some roadie shit. And so we'll just continue to talk like nothing's happening, right? It's like some... This is like some
roadie shit, bro.
Spinal Tap shit going on right here.
Hello, Cleveland.
Hello, Cleveland. Fuck.
You were saying, I'm sorry. Thank you, my brother.
And you get some guys back, you said the crew's back from doing some rigging training down in, Escondido, I guess?
Yeah, they were basically down in San Diego at View's headquarters, and we had brought the A12, the AL12 rig in. I think its most recent deployment was with Usher. I think before that, Ken Lamar. It's a great rig, you know. It really supplies the low end and handles that bass really well. It sounds great. So we ran it up here, but of course, you know, we have a bunch of different rigs in here that the kids are very proficient at running, but they're not, you know, rigging a system, as you well know, they're not all created equal. And each, you know, in Adamson, we throw out an Adamson rig, we kind of update our Adamson training for the kids that are playing with it, or an L Acoustics, or any rig that we operate. And this rig had been sitting for a second, so we pulled it out, and we had the kids run down real quick. The boss did, my brother, had them go down and do some real quick update their skill set. And so that was, I think, good for them. And they're back in the force, and we got that thing where it's, as we can see it right there.
Yeah, it's got it all lined up.
It's taking up a big section of the shop over there because we're about to push it out into this big thing we're doing here in the Bay Area for Lizzo. So yeah, I think they enjoyed themselves a great deal.
Fantastic, man.
And learned some good stuff.
And of course, Kyle is out building the Janet Jackson tour. That's
he's a good soul. He's a smart kid. My brother thought that he made sense to be there for a couple of days, helping out. So that's what when the big cheese needs to make things happen in different places. He puts the right people in the right spots, and so Kyle's down doing that. He'll be back, I believe, in the beginning of the week in time for us to start. We're going into a couple crazy weeks right now.
It's going to ramp up now, isn't it?
Oh man, it's going to be a full,
Full Monty.
Yeah. We'll have all hands on deck. There'll be some late nights. There'll be some, I want to say, a solid, that as far as the eye can see going forward for a minute, it's going to be pretty nutty, and that's fantastic. And hopefully we will rise to the occasion and make a lot of people smile. And
hopefully.
You know, there's this thing in me that I'm intellectually trying to be as honest as humanly possible. We always rise to the occasion. The show always goes off, and we're hoping that everybody will be in good stead. And you know, see, I'm trying so hard to be diplomatic here. There's a fucking lot of work to do.
Yeah, but it's a lot of work. But you also know you're
going
kick-ass,
in a lot of different directions, and so I don't want to be cocky or immodest about it. We will. It's going to take.
That's your job to kick ass, though.
It is. I do get paid the median bucks to bring it, and
absolutely,
you know, kind of be the outside organizer of making all these things happen, and couldn't do it without the support of the whole team, and we're very lucky that way. My brother hired some good people to do, you know, to helm a lot of our departments to make this happen. So as a production company, we do a lot. You know, we'll bring out lights, staging, audio. It's a lot.
I was going to say, I've been, you know, for several weeks now, I've been watching the guys just busting ass out there with the staging, and the stuff looks like it just came off the factory floor.
Well, that's the other thing too.
Amazing restoration of all that equipment.
That's really sweet of you to point that out. This is a massive stage and roof, and here at Sound Image, we like to make sure that my brother in particular is extraordinarily fastidious about making sure that the gear is always in tip-top shape. Right. We don't let anything go out. So it's not going to be like some other staging that we've dealt with in the past. We've all dealt with it. I'm sure our guest this evening has dealt with this, where it can be a little rusty and a little ratty and little soft spots in the decks and stuff. No, that doesn't happen here. So
don't land a PA there.
No. You know what I mean? It's just not what we do. So there's always painting and refurbishing and reconditioning going on. So everything's up tip-top shape.
Yeah, looks great.
And so in the case of the stage, you know, there was a lot of stuff that needed to be done. So it took a period of time. And going into this, now I believe we're ready, and we've got some really great gear to go out and make people happy, put on some shows.
Fantastic, man.
Yeah,
Looking forward to it. Get that sunshine going, get some warmth back, get some shows happening. Yeah. And we got a guest who's done some shows. He's done a few shows.
Yeah, tonight's guest is an extraordinary cat.
And an old friend of mine, too. So that's badass.
Very good. Thank you so much for filling in for Kyle this night. I hope Kyle's doing well. He said he was going to catch some of the comments and stuff. Haven't seen him come on. I want to thank the folks that have stopped in this evening. Tony Lewis, hello, my good friend. I've got your pink Sharpie, and and I'm not giving it back. Pat O'Dole, you're the man. Susan Kearney, I'm the love of my life, the one and the only Jackie Canterbury. I love this woman with my whole heart. I'm going to get to this thing. I want to talk with Ken. I don't got a lot of time, and so I'm going to do it. All right, buddy?
Yeah, you're gonna need time.
I know, it's beef, and I'm going to just do my very best. Let me get right to it. Thank you, Bern, for being here. Thank you, guys. This evening, I always try to get interesting folks in here. I was very, very lucky in reaching out to tonight's guest and having him agree to come on. He's a sweetheart of a guy. We tool around together a little bit with some of the other guys on Scoville's Robert Scoville's back lounge every Friday, and I believe that's 420 that we tool up over there. You should get an invite to that if you can come. There's a lot of fun happening there. Check it out. This young man has been doing sound since 1973. If you're keeping count, if you do math at all, which I actually not a big fan of math or creativity.
Especially not creative math.
Not creative math, yes. So I'm thinking that's almost 50 years of being in the industry. He's worked with some extraordinarily legendary people from Julio Iglesias and Barrie Manilow, Liza Minnelli, Stevie Nicks, Chris Isaak, Shirley MacLaine. I've so got to ask him about Shirley MacLaine. Please welcome, Bern, with me, the one and only Ken Newman. How are you, Ken?
All right. How you guys doing?
We're doing great, Ken. Much better now we get to talk with you, my friend.
Great.
It is absolutely a treat to have you on the show, sir.
Thanks for the great intro. That's very generous of you.
And I mean it from the heart. That's one thing you'll find on the show. All we have to sell is sincerity, so you're only getting the most sincere version of me, my friend. Let me ask you.
Very cool.
We start kind of, we're a little bit bookended. The show we kind of end and start with the same two questions, and we jump around in the middle. But we're really interested in the origin story. You a guy like yourself, 50 years in the game. Can you share with us how you got in the industry?
Sure. My father had a chain of electronic parts stores. Growing up, I was always into something electronic, and then got into CB radio, ham radio. My father and mother were both ham radio operators when I was growing up, and then eventually came upon sound because I was in the band at school. I played. I didn't play, but I played the trumpet.
Sure.
In the elementary school band, and the band leader said, "Hey, we want to get some recording equipment and record this band. And hey, our sound system in the auditorium needs some help, and this and that." And I said, "Well, sure, I can help with that. My father does electronic stuff. I can do electronic stuff." So one thing led to another, and before I know it, I'm setting up this whole recording rig for the school band. And then I got to be friends with a guy that was older than me that had a recording studio in his house when people didn't have recording studios in their houses.
Yeah.
And one thing led to another, and I'm now connected with one of the more famous local rock bands, and worked with them a bit. And one thing leads to another. I'm working with other local rock bands, and on and on. And so just one thing leads to another, it seems. And I've been very fortunate to have certain things happen. Like I'll meet certain people that will be very helpful with my progress of my career. And that's been amazing. I just feel like really lucky that I got this break to do this, and then got a break to do that. And before I know it, the band I'm working for, hey, they got a recording contract with RCA Records. And then I go work for another band, and they have a recording contract with Columbia Records. And then that band opens for the Doobie Brothers. And the Doobie Brothers had this great sound system from A1 Audio,
Yep.
And I said, "Wow, if I ever get a chance to, I'm gonna get this sound system to use with one of the bands I'm working for." And so I got that opportunity. A few months later, got A1 Audio to do the sound for the first band's showcase at RCA Records studio in Hollywood, and started my relationship with A1 Audio, and that was a great thing because Al Siniscal, the owner of A1 Audio, really liked me a lot, liked how I was proactive and worked hard and tried to make sure everybody was happy with the sound. And so I got hooked up with the whole A1 Audio scene, and that was quite a scene in the 80s. I worked for, the first artist that I worked with first thing I did was got a house gig in Atlantic City and did that for a few years. We built a sound system in this what turned into the Sands in Atlantic City.
Sure.
And
cool.
And then different artists came through there. Shirley MacLaine came through there one year, and then the next year she was going on the road and her sound man got sick or something. So her tour manager, Michael Flowers, called me up and said, "Hey, can you meet us in Atlanta tomorrow?" And I was like, "Hey, this is perfect timing because I'm really getting tired of working here in Atlantic City."
Yeah.
And so there I was on the road with Shirley MacLaine all of a sudden.
Well,
and
I'm going to stop you right there
because different A1 audio artists.
I have a feeling I could just let you go. You would kill this. You don't even need me. And that's actually pretty great. But two things come up in your answers there is my profound curiosity of you working with Shirley MacLaine. I mean, I don't know if the audience in general understands who Shirley MacLaine. That's first of all, that's her brother is he's famous actor
Warren Beatty.
She's known for some interesting points of view, but I don't think a lot of people understand. She is a triple threat. She's a dancer, she's a singer, she's an actress, hell, she's a writer. I guess she's a quadruple that. She's an extraordinary woman. They're really, in some ways, Hollywood royalty, in some ways, a national treasure. So that's my first thing I'd like to know about her. And then the other one is I want to know, and we'll scoot back to some studio questions I have, but what was it like working with the great Shirley MacLaine?
That was interesting. So it was more working with Michael Flowers, who was her tour manager. And Michael Flowers is an exceptional tour manager. These days, he's still doing it, and he works with Bernadette Peters these days.
Oh my God!
And he's
so
great. So great at making sure everybody on the crew feels like they're the most important person in the world, and that was a great thing. And anyway, Keith Hubble and I started at the same time with Shirley MacLaine. And Keith is like sort of a really great sound guy, but more easygoing than I am. He's like kind of a surfer dude, and I'm kind of like an electronics nerd,
Yeah.
And anyway, we both started at the same time, and he had a personal relationship. He got along really well with Shirley. I was just the sound guy, doing the sound and making it really as good as I could make it.
Sure.
And she appreciated that because she had a very keen sense of hearing, but not such a keen sense of how to describe what was bothering her about the sound.
Okay.
The phrase "bottom of the barrel" comes to mind because that was her most often used phrase to describe how the sound was bothering her. Oh, it sounds like I'm in the bottom of a barrel. And she was very I don't want to say eccentric, but very her mind's always moving.
Yes.
And she's always thinking about stuff. And she had a fantastic show with the full orchestra, 30-piece orchestra or so at that time in the 80s. And it was just a great experience for me as a kid. I was in my 20s, and there I am on the road with Shirley MacLaine doing these shows with the orchestra, and Keith ended up doing monitors. What happened at first was, since she had one sound guy before, his name was Jerry Nutt. Jerry did the monitors from front of house, and so she only had one sound guy and only one console. And so that's how we started it. We said, let's just both mix on the same PM2000. Okay. So we did that. And one night it really clicked for her. So 3 shows into us working on the show. And she said, what was that? I want that every night. And so it was like, well, Keith was messing with the monitors. I was messing with the house. Let's do that. So then we got another console, and Keith took over on the, doing monitors from the side of the stage. And it was a really great experience, thanks to Michael Flowers. And Shirley was, just really interesting to work with. Now, I should tell you that years later, about 8 years later, after I worked for Paul Anka, Michael Flowers needed to take a time off because his parents basically were very ill, so he had to take care of them.
Wow.
And so he said, hey, can you fill in for me for a couple months? So I was like, sure. So now I was tour manager for Shirley MacLaine for a couple months in Europe, and I forget where else, but that was a real trip because now you're dealing with her on a real personal level, and I'm not a personal kind of guy. I'm a technical kind of guy,
Sure.
It was, to say the least, very interesting, and she was very interesting to work with, very very what would you call it, moody, I guess, but artistically moody, very creative person, and very warm. When she loved something, she loved it dearly. It really showed that love for you.
She's very emotive,
and Michael always took care of us really well.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yes.
And so it was a very interesting experience. The first couple of shows that I did with her as tour manager, she had like sort of a nervous breakdown before she had to cancel a couple shows because she was freaking out so badly. And we all attributed it to the fact that Michael was not there, and Michael was her everything to her.
Yeah,
and so he wasn't there, and I was trying to fill his shoes. Oh my God, it was like ridiculous trying to fill his shoes. But I remember, she had certain hotel requirements, like she had to be able to get CNN, and she had to be able to open the windows on the hotel. And so the first gig, I forget where it was, somewhere in South Carolina or something, she ended up at a Courtyard by Marriott, because that was the only hotel that she could move to that had the windows that would open. It was very interesting. And she wanted room service also. It was all the normal celebrity stuff, but in a very earthy kind of way. She was a very earthy person,
Well, yeah,
cool.
and
what a great show.
You named it. You said she was eccentric. I remember she did an interview with Mike Wallace in the mid '80s, and Mike Wallace is being Mike Wallace, being a little nasty, and he's starting to go after her about these statements she's made about reincarnation and the afterlife, and he asked her some smarmy, kind of almost smart. I loved Mike Wallace's style, but here it was inappropriate. But Shirley MacLaine, those eyes, and she's just the way she is, and he said something kind of what sounded a little smart-assy about that part of her belief system. And she said, "Really, Mike, do you need to be that nasty? Is that really what you want to do?" It was so perfect. She just throttled him in this way that to Mike Wallace. I mean, this is Mike Wallace. To get Mike Wallace to kind of back out of his
it's not just any interviewer.
To back him out of his mode, his Mike Wallace mode, because it's Shirley MacLaine. It's not some guy who's rolling back miles at a used car lot. Some of the stuff that he's more known for. This is So it was. I've always just thought of her as a very class act. I imagined some of the things you mentioned, some of the more interesting characteristics working in it, and I was kind of hoping you would fill in those spaces. So thank you.
I worked for her when she got her Oscar for Terms of Endearment.
Oh, that's a great movie.
We're in New York City at the Gershwin for like a month, and she got this Oscar, and she let us all handle it and stuff. It was really cool. It was a really neat time. And it was a really neat time to be working for Shirley MacLaine, because she was very popular right then,
doing a lot
having
of work.
gotten this Oscar. And like Michael Jackson came to the show in New York City, and lots of celebrities came to the show in New York City, and some of them were very complimentary to me in particular, and it was really cool.
No, I'm sure you were doing a bang-up job, and she was known for having Michael Jackson as kind of the Bubbles days. Yeah, back then, she had a lot of folks around her, and she was a little bit of a prophet in some ways. It's yet another lane that she had, but always just an extraordinary actress and a hell of a talent. I want, and Michael, you were mentioning Mike Flower. I mean, to do that kind of PM, to be that kind of tour manager I don't really know that they exist that way so much anymore. He's a psychologist. He's trying to make everybody feel loved and important on the crew. I'm not sure that the business is built this way so much anymore. You certainly don't see a lot of that. It's good when you can employ that and be that kind of a tour manager. I'm just not sure that all the modern way of approach is a little less hands-on in the kind way, There's a little more pointing in yelling in the mix. So, but he was a special guy. You mentioned in your run-up when we first started talking about how that you were lucky enough, because so much about this is about networking and being in the right place at the right time and letting your work speak for itself and then get lifted up to the next spot. But I was wondering, in your opinion, and Lord knows you've got the experience of doing it, you mentioned that you would be with a band and they were kind of in a formative stage, and then they'd get a record deal with Columbia, and then the next band would be with RCA. Do you think that that's still a model that it lives in the game? Is that part of the record industry and artist development over with?
Well, my opinion is that is a thing of the past. I mean, there seem to be a couple artists here and there that get some big break that gets them to move forward, but it seems like it's really very different than it used to be. I mean, that's the old model from the old days, getting a record contract. And it was like, you get a record contract and, oh, yay, we're going to be successful. But these days, you get a record contract. What does that mean? That just means you're going to owe the record company a lot of money. That's right. And then you don't make any money from selling records. You don't make any money from streaming. And it's just like, it's a miserable time to be a creative artist, it seems to me.
Well, I mean, we know that, and we're living proof of it, that what it seems to, the transfer has been out of that model into this putting tushes in seats if you want to get paid. You create the content, and then you got to get it out there to the people so they know to come and see you, and then that's the pay avenue. And so for folks in our side of the industry,
T-shirts,
and selling T-shirts, and hopefully they like $20 beers and $15 hot dogs, But excuse me.
Yeah, that's where the money is apparently. Yeah, it's crazy.
I know there was something to be said for the old model, but like you said, it didn't work out for many bands because they'd come away with these big debts and their studio costs and so on. But yeah, it seems to be gone as a larger thing. It seems to be gone. I'm not sure that maybe you've already done it, but if you could for me, because you mentioned some of the early coming up stuff, you mentioned a lot of studio work in your early career, but I know largely in the last many years you've been out in the road, you've been out with big bands like Barrie and others. How would you describe, if I was just a goof coming up to you? Well, I am just a goof coming to me right now, but if we were at a party together and I said, hi, I'm Vince. You're Ken. Ken, what do you do for a living? How would you tell
Are you hitting on him?
Well, look at him. He's handsome, guys.
You're at a party, had a little bit too much to drink.
I come over with a little drink and a little.
He's a good-looking dude.
Couple little hors d'oeuvres. You can hang out with me, bud.
Come here often.
All right, you stay out of this. He's troublemaker, Ken. I'm so sorry. How would you describe to a layman what you do for a living currently?
Well, that's a good question because I answer that all the time. People are always like asking me, what do you do? What do you do? Yeah. And I call it, and this is just my little definition, I call it, I do sound for live events, concerts, corporate events. And whenever there's a gathering of people that needs sound reinforcement, some kind of sound system or whatever, I can work on it. And that's what I do, is control that sound system, maybe even set it up, maybe even build part of it, Sure. And that's what I do. I do sound for live events is what I call it. So hopefully get and then if the people want more explanation, I go, remember, when you go to see a concert, that control area down in the middle of the audience with all the lights and the knobs and stuff, that's I'm one of those guys,
And does the light kind of go on in their eyes when you point that out and they're like, oh, that place, that
and then they go,
thing.
oh, that guy, oh, yeah,
you're
okay,
the guy.
Okay. Yeah, right,
Yeah, no, that's a perfect way to make it make sense for them. I've kind of a long time ago gave up saying what I do.
Right.
Just all the misconceptions. Oh, you must get.
If you only had some creativity, you could say so many things about it.
But I don't. As we know, we've talked about this. No creativity. So sometimes I bury the lead with the artist that because of the way I throw the questions together. But I decided not to do this with you. Let's talk about the great. And now I really mean this. I came up in a house with singer-songwriter stuff in the 70s. So a lot of the Paul Anka, Barrie Manilow, Paul Williams types, that was playing in the house. That was the music of it's like the soundtrack to my life. And I'm not sure if people understand this, but Barrie Manilow is one of the most prolific, probably through the decades, decade after decade, of making extraordinary music and doing big shows and being relatively successful for as long as I can remember. What is it like being out front for the great Barrie Manilow?
Well, it's interesting in so many ways because the audience is really into it. The audience loves him more than life.
Yeah.
And and he does everything. He rehearses and manufactures his show in such a way that he's trying to get every ounce of reaction out of the audience, and he succeeds most of the time. And it's really invigorating to see him. He's 78, 79. So he's really old.
Yes.
So, I mean, he's even older than me, right? and so he's really still going for it. I mean, he really goes for it. He doesn't hold back at all. He's always going for it. And he just, it's what I like to think is that I'm just trying to keep up with him because he's going for it. I got to go for it also.
Oh, absolutely.
So every show is new to me. And I'm just trying to make sure it sounds the way he wants it to sound because he has a certain sound. He always has. I mean, when I was in that A1 Audio Click, he was the biggest artist that they did sound for.
Yeah.
And so that was why I always aspired to someday I'll hook up with Barrie Manilow and do his sound because he's the biggest artist that A1 Audio does sound for. So eventually I got that opportunity thanks to Paul Dalen in 1991 or 2 or something. Mm-hmm. And I was, thrown into the seat and kind of auditioned by fire at rehearsal, and then I passed the audition because there I was on the road with him in 1992, and he was happy with what I was doing, and one thing leads to another, and I'm still there. However, I did take a few years off when I took a gig with a staff gig with video applications that turned into World Stage in the 2002 to 2011 or so, but since 1992, I've been connected with him in some way. And it's very invigorating anyway, to see this guy really going for it every show. And he, I go to other shows, I go to concerts these days, and I see what other artists do. And it's interesting to see how other artists approach things so differently than he does. You've got like I went to see Pink, for example. Now Pink goes for it,
yeah,
right? And she's in a sort of theatrical kind of way. She's flying around, she's singing her ass off, she's making the people happy, making the people sad, going through all the emotions. Just amazing, and he is doing that on another level of, he explains the songs, and he really gets every ounce of emotion out of every song that he can. And then you go to see, like I went to see Peter Frampton, it's just music, right? It's just like, here's another song we did, and here's another song we did. Yeah. It's just songs and music, and it's great and everything. Sure. But it doesn't have the emotional impact that a show like a Barrie Manilow or a Pink has. It's really interesting anyway to see. Yeah. And the cool thing is, though, that at his age, he's still doing it and still going for it. He's not slacking. He's not like going, well, you know what, I'll just take it easy and I'll just sit at the piano and play my songs. Right. No, he's not. No, there's no way he's doing that. He is totally motivated to give his all every show. Yeah. And he does. He goes for it.
Yeah, and that must be a real treat.
And I don't know if you've heard about his sound, his sound requirements, especially his monitors. Very, very unique sound that he's looking for in the monitors. I don't know how Will Miller does it. Will is just an amazing monitor guy for many reasons, but two reasons in particular, that, he gives them that sound that he wants, which is so different than the average monitor mix. And he, complies with his requests like nobody has ever done before. I worked with a bunch of monitor guys when I was doing the sound for Barrie in the 90s and the early 2000s, and nobody did it anywhere near as well as Will. And Will just nails it all the time, and also nails it on an emotional level. He has such empathy for Barrie when he's performing, and he might say something that sounds kind of mean, but Will doesn't take it that way. It's an amazing thing to watch this whole machine work.
Wow, it sounds like he's very fortunate to have both of you. I always thought the monitor job, especially for, when you think of an artist that's been doing this for 40, 50 years, it really understands what he wants, understands the technology. That's a tough spot to be in for a monitor guy, and have you got a guy? Yeah,
well, especially when their hearing starts to deteriorate, that makes it that much harder to achieve that, because, if you want it bright, he's always had a desire to have things sound really bright. I don't know if you've done much stuff in the studio, but I don't know, in the 70s and 80s when they were recording stuff in the studios, when you would go in that control room, it was like, wow, is that bright and really brash right in your face, because they had to make it that way so that by the time it got through the vinyl process, it would still sound good, right? Right. And so that is where he sort of cut his teeth. That's the sound that he's looking for, is that in your face kind of wow sound. Sure. Both in his monitors and in the house. It's very interesting.
Well, I have seen a bunch of photos with him out at the board with you. Is he out there checking up on you? How is it? I mean, I know Prince and many artists.
That's part of his thing is to listen to the sound in the house and then go up to the stage and see how it sounds up there. But he knows that it's two different things, and he makes up the difference, and he comes out to the house. Now, it was easier to comply with his requests when his hearing was better. Sure. But nowadays he'll ask for things, and I'll go, okay, I'll do that now. But I think what he really means is this, because I don't want to offend the audience with some real bright stuff that he's asking for, and it would really be offensive. So, and he understands that I'm going to not do that fully when the audience gets in, but he wants to hear it now for himself, Right.
Well, I guess that's the. But
he makes a habit of coming out to hear the mix in the house pretty frequently. It depends what kind of phase we're in. If we're in a he doesn't trust me phase, then he's like coming out to the audience a lot. If he's in a, oh yeah, I got all these great comments about the sound. We did a whole month on Broadway a couple of years ago, and he didn't come out the house, I don't think, once. Okay. All he heard was great comments about the sound. So he was like, he never came out to the audience once. But yet, at the Westgate in Vegas, he comes out pretty frequently, every other day or so, right, and wants to hear what this song sounds like, or that song sounds like. But the cool thing about it is, by the way, he's so cool when it comes to that, because even though he might ask for things that sound a little extreme or extraordinary or different than what you think might be right, he never asks for anything with his vocal. He never tries to sing from front of house and, hey, I don't hear myself well enough, or any of that kind of stuff that I hear that other artists do. Yeah. That is so great, because he understands that, you can't do that. You just can't do that. That's right. Yeah, he's so very cool stuff.
It sounds like you've got a great artist. I know in here we have kind of theme days here, and I've got different playlists, and one of them is my 70s singer-songwriter playlist, and we'll play, and I'll be rolling around, and Could It Be Magical come on, and I'll be singing at the top of my lungs, and I got all these people that think I'm crazy, because yesterday could have been Queens of the Stone Age Day or Motley Crue Day or something, and it just takes so much.
There you go.
Yeah, there's. He truly is, Cookbook Cabana, all of his albums. My mom plays those things religiously to this day, and I was raised in a very musical family in Barrie Manilow. Seriously, I'm not just saying this because we're talking to you. Barrie Manilow was a huge part of it. I've heard every one of his albums multiple times. I'm a big fan of many of his things, and what a great artist to get to work with. I have no choice but to ask you about this next thing, because I found it to be quite interesting. So, Mr. Frank Sinatra. Now, this is the chairman of the board. This is Big Daddy. My understanding is you had a unique tie-in with a one-off with Frank Sinatra's estate. Tell us about that.
Well, I did the sound at Frank Sinatra's funeral. Frank Sinatra dead, Wow. So that was a unique gig. Because the reason I was chosen to do that, no encore. But it was his band. His band played in the church and everything. His band played walk-in music. It was interesting. I had done a few Frank Sinatra gigs in Atlantic City, because in Atlantic City he was one of the popular artists. In fact, when I first went to the Resorts Casino in Atlantic City, the big deal was, we got to get ready for the Frank Sinatra performance. We have to modify our sound system. That's why you're here, because you're going to add speaker systems to this sound system and make it good enough for Frank Sinatra. So I did all that, got it ready for Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra played weeks and weeks at Resorts. And then he also played at the other casino that I moved to that became the Sands. And then I got to be friends with Hank Catania. Do you know Hank Catania?
I don't.
So Hank had a company in New York called Altel Sound Systems, and he did sound for, he was friends with Al Siniscal, and they were kind of friendly competitors, and they got started in the business around the same time. Al Siniscal was A1 Audio. Right. Hank Catania was Altel, and Altel did sound for Liza Minnelli. They did sound for Frank Sinatra. They did sound for some other artists that I can't think of right now. But anyway, Hank Catania he was also connected with Paul Anka, and he was very trusted by Paul Anka. So every once in a while, when I worked for Paul Anka, Hank Catania would be called in to check up on us. He would, when we played in Monte Carlo, Paul said, "Hey, Hank, come to Monte Carlo." And we were like, we don't need any supervision. We know what we're doing. But, Hank being there made things go perfectly. It was great. Hank was fantastic. Anyway, Hank went on to be Frank Sinatra's tour manager or production manager for many years, 10 or 15 years, towards the end of Frank's career. And so when Frank passed away, he called up A1 Audio. He said, "Who do you got available?" And they said, "Well, Ken Newman's available." And he said, "Oh, that's good. I know him." So have him do the sound at the church and show up at the whatever time. And we set up a couple speakers, set up a little mixing console, and played the music that they wanted us to play, and also amplified the the people that were speaking, the minister and stuff. It was quite the unique event.
Was this a kind of a who's who type thing, or is this a family thing?
It was kind of a who's who because it was in Beverly Hills and it was a private, but it was definitely not just a family. It was plenty of people in there.
It's Frank Sinatra. I can imagine.
The funny thing I remember about it was that with the system, A1 Audio provided a press bridge, and we all know what a press bridge is. It's one input, many outputs for the press, right? Right? So the press was hanging out outside the church, and I said, "Well, I'll run a cable out and give them an audio feed, right?" Yeah. So I go out to the press where they're hanging out, and they're all clamoring for any information about what's going on inside the church, and I said to them, "Well, I have audio here," and they said, almost in unison, like a bunch of them said, "What good is audio? You don't have video?" And I was like, "No, sorry, I don't have video." They said, we don't want your stinking audio then." And that was the end of that. No, and as it turned out, I wasn't authorized to give them audio anyway, so it was a good thing that they said no, because I would have gotten in trouble.
And then they wrote that song, "Video Killed the Radio Star."
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
He's kicking in over here. Thank you, Shucky.
He's creative,
Yeah, it's the creative thing. It's rearing up. But I do know that you actually did capture the moment, though, right? You recorded this event.
Yeah, well, and I gave sent the tape right to Hank Catania, and I've never seen it since. Wow! So I don't know what it sounds like, but But I remember that I played the song. They wanted us to play one song from the CD. It was "Put Your Dreams Away," I think it's called. I forget, but it was the theme song of Frank Sinatra's TV show when he had a TV show, and I didn't even know he had a TV show. But anyway, I was just following in the program. There was no stage manager or anybody telling me what to do, but I'm looking at the program and it said, "Okay, song plays." Okay, so I play on the CD player, and it played. And the next day in the USA Today article, it said, "Not a dry eye in the house after the song was played," and so forth. And I was like, "Hey, I made that happen."
Yeah, good for you. Kind of the power of music, really. But it was it's very interesting to hear that something totally. This is Frank Sinatra. I imagine there's studio heads there, let alone some serious talent. That wouldn't have had more of a top-down kind of directive, kind of some kind of production manager, some kind of somebody there, a head event coordinator to deal with that. But unusual. I noticed in your bio that you've worked with a lot of people. You mentioned Liza Minnelli. I'm going to have no choice but to ask you about that, obviously. But I know you've done both Mons and front of house. Do you have a preference? To me, they're very different jobs that require very different things. Do you have
totally different? Totally different. I mean, Will Miller, who I work with on Barrie Manilow, is the king of monitor mixing, if you ask me, because he has the psychology down to a science. He just knows exactly what to do because of why. In fact, he studied psychology in college, so I think he might even have a degree in psychology or something. Wow. But anyway, the point is that monitors aren't for me, but I do it once in a while because I can do it okay. Sure. As long as I don't get asked too many opinion questions, right? So I did monitors for Engelbert a few times. I did monitors for Liza for a month before Paul Anka hired me back, and that was kind of a power play between Hank Catania and Paul Anka, because Paul wanted to prove that he could hire me back, and people wanted to outdo Hank or something. Anyway, but I did a month of shows with her at the Palladium in London, and the interesting thing about that was those shows you could set your clock by exactly by what what part of the show you were in. Sure. And she was just very exact, doing the exact same show every night, and it was really exact, and she just performed her ass off every night. And
it's a Broadway trained lady. Yeah, makes perfect sense, actually. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and then. But then at the end, they said, okay, we're going to bring in Showtime or something to record the show for video, right? Okay. So they brought in the audio truck, and Ed Green was in the truck. You know who Ed Green is, right? I mean, he was the king of TV audio for many years. Yeah. And he was in the truck, and he said, that mic isn't sounding quite right. Can we switch to another mic? And we were like, yeah, sure. So we switched to another mic. like towards the end of the rehearsal. And then for the show, she's using this different mic, which looks identical to her. She doesn't know we changed the mic, right?
Okay.
But she's like freaking out. She's like sweating profusely, and the monitors, it's just all the sound is not right to her. She's just dying, and she was ready to kill me. It was like, wow, she was really angry. And then come to find out that this microphone, it was, they were Vega wirelesses, VHF. So probably what happened was the compander wasn't tracking properly, because it's a compressor on the mic, expander on the receiver, and it wasn't tracking right. And to her, I mean, we'll check 1, 2, we didn't feel it. But when she tried to sing into it, it was just not happening. She was like, what the hell did you guys do to my microphone? She was freaking out. And so came to the end of the show, and Gary Labriola, the tour manager, came over and asked me about it. And I said, well, Ed asked us to change the mic. And he said, oh, well, all right, I'll tell her. Anyway, she invited me to the dressing room and apologized profusely for getting so angry. I mean, she barely got angry at me at all, but she apologized profusely that she was so upset about the sound. It wasn't my fault because Ed asked for the different microphone and we didn't know that it didn't feel the same. And anyway, it was just a sweet moment from a sweet lady who really, really was so apologetic. She was so nice. It was really great.
That's really wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, no, she's, to me, again, another national treasure from Cabaret. We just saw her recently in the on the Oscars, and it just made me think of her, knowing that you were coming on. And,
oh man, it made me sad to see her looking so,
me too.
In poor health. It's just wow.
Yeah,
that's sad.
I think we just forget, she's a lady of a certain age. She's been a fixture in our lives since I can remember. I don't remember a time her not being in our lives. And she's always just such a unique person. I remember coming up with her on the talk shows, circulating, Dinah and Johnny and so on, and just a lovely woman. And of course, her Hollywood legend status as being the daughter of Judy Garland. Just an extraordinary human being.
Absolutely.
And she's certainly brought a lot to the world of entertainment, and an extremely talented woman. I mentioned that we hang out once in a while over at Robert Scoville's Back Lounge. What a sweet guy, providing that community for us to come in, all kind of talk with each other and have the different folks get together.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
What do you think about this kind of evolution in the last couple of years? I guess it was kind of COVID. Like, this show is kind of shot out of COVID, and I think the Robert Scoville thing, do you think it's been a plus? How do you view it? There's so many different offerings now. Has it been good?
Well, I think it's fantastic for people that are coming up to find out more about the business that we do, and to be able to chat with people that have been doing it for their whole lives and stuff. I think it's a great thing, and it's a shame that it had to take COVID and the lockdowns and stuff for it to happen, but it did happen, and it's all these podcasts and Zoom meetings and things that people have. It's very supportive, I think, because the accessibility of that kind of talk, that kind of chat room, well, it wasn't there until this lockdown, as far as I knew anyway. And then all of a sudden we get this lockdown, people that are generous like Robert Scoville and others just, really came out of the woodwork, and you doing this show, it's just really helpful to young people getting started in the business, and to get a little insight into what it's all about.
I hope it's landing out exactly.
And not to mention the mental support for when you're realizing that, oh my God, I haven't worked in months, and this, I'm miserable, and the mental support is invaluable. It's fantastic.
No, I think that was probably where we came from. And I know I started this with this young man over here, Mr. Broderick, and I think a part of the motivation was because we could see initially early on that some folks were getting a little bummed out and not happy, and we thought, what are you going to go remind them? Let's just go talk, kind of like that thing between doors and sound check that you do with your friends, and just remind them why we're here, why we're doing this, and that keep your head about you, because we're going to all come back sooner than later, and it will be okay. So I'm glad it's worked out so well. I mentioned that you worked. We're kind of getting close to time, but your career again: Liza Minnelli, Shirley MacLaine, Burt Bacharach, Chris Isaak. You've worked with some extraordinarily talented people. I've got friends out, Eddie, the great Eddie Kaipo, dealing with the young Enrique Iglesias. It was like we're working with the world's largest entertainer. And this is the best-selling entertainer of all time. This would be the great, and I mean that, as it relates to a world entertainer, it's really Julio Iglesias. I can't think of somebody that gets bigger if we don't bring in Elvis and the Beatles to the mix. It's just
right.
Massive.
It was pretty interesting. I'll tell you a little story, because when I worked for Paul Anka in the 80s, we were in Vegas and we're supposed to be doing a show at the Golden Nugget every night. And he calls in sick basically one night and he says, "Hey, you want to go see Julio at Caesar's Palace?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." So we go see Julio at Caesar's Palace. And this is, Chris Carlton. Chris Carlton was doing the sound, and it was fantastic. It was the most different sounding concert that I had ever heard. And I was like, wow, this is eye-opening and ear-opening to hear Julio's show sounding like this. Lots of reverb on everything, but different decay times on different things and stuff. It just sounded amazing.
Wow.
So I thought, wow, that's just really cool that Julio has this amazing Julio sound, right? Mm-hmm. And then years later, I get this opportunity to work for him. I'm like, wow, I got to try to get that Chris Carlton sound that I heard at Caesars.
Right.
And so I strove for that, and he had a fantastic band, and it was just like so easy to get it to sound good because the band was so great. And he didn't, like, the first night I worked with him, it was me and Seth Goldman. You know Seth Goldman?
I don't actually know.
Worked with Pink Floyd. He's a world-renowned monitor guy, works with Pink Floyd and major artists. But anyway, he came in as the monitor guy, I came in as the house guy. It's a long story about how I got the gig, but I'll leave that for another time.
Yes.
But anyway, we both started the same night at Foxwoods in Connecticut, and no sound check with Julio. Julio just showed up for the show, and he just told us, he brought us to the dressing room before the show and said, I'll give you some hand signals about the reverb and this and that. And by the second song, we were locked in. We got the hand signal that said, "Don't change a thing,"
Right.
And it was just amazing to listen and just hear that and be on the receiving end of all that magic that was Julio singing with this amazing band. It was really cool, and that went on for months and months. And he just kept hiring me. And he was like, whenever you can be here, that's great. If you have another gig, that's fine too. Get somebody else to fill in for you. So Jim Yakubuski filled in for me, and David Dansky filled in for me, and
wow,
some other people. And then but it was my gig for like 2 years or something.
Okay.
And then eventually he got tired of me and he fired me violently in the middle of a show. But for a long time there, it was really great. It was really great.
Yeah.
There was what we described as a sort of a mental competition thing going on between him and his son Enrique, and Enrique was just becoming popular then, and Enrique was doing arena shows with lots of production, and it was kind of a competition, and it was like, wow, he's just caught up in his own madness. And so he was striving for something that he was didn't know exactly what he wanted to get, but he was striving for something. And so that's when I got fired, I'm pretty sure. It was pretty interesting.
Well, trying to keep up with the young Enrique Iglesias with his the incredible accomplishments that his dad had done. He'd really showed the kid, how to be in the industry. And that kid, talk about a guy who leaves it on stage and brings his own special thing to it. I don't think he's in any way a copy of his dad, but man, I think he definitely inherited his audience and then some. And really does a great job. So, listen, I have a ton more questions to ask you, but time is flown for us. So I'm going to ask you this. Now, there's some young folks hanging out here watching this show right now. Hopefully they stay till the end. And I'm sure they would love to mimic or somehow basically have a kind of a career trajectory that you've had, the success that you've had. What kind of advice do you have for the young folks coming up in the industry?
Wow, that's a good question. I would say, listen closely, work passionately, and show up on time or early, and work as hard as you can. And if you're just getting started, don't worry about how much it pays or anything. Just do it for the work and to get the experience, because this is a craft, I guess you would call it.
Sure.
Doing sound for live events is kind of a craft, and I think you only learn it thoroughly by doing it. You only learn what not to do by having that horrible thing happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
So just be passionate, and work hard at it. Show up on time so that you continue to get hired or volunteer, and just listen real closely. I find that people don't listen very closely often these days because they're so caught up in the things that are happening around them that they're not listening very closely to what's coming out of the sound system and what's coming out, what the room is doing to it, and so forth.
Right.
And my friend Will Miller is just texting me. He says, "Advice: go to law school."
Will's not wrong. Yep. Will may have a point there. Well, thank you, Will, for that injection of reality.
But but the thing is, if you're passionate about doing sound, I mean, there's nothing, as well as I do, Vince, that there's nothing like having a great sounding sound system in a great sounding room and cranking the shit out of it. Sorry, pardon my French, but cranking it so that it sounds really awesome, and you have some great musicians on stage, and you get that mix to be just right. It's just, there's nothing like it.
It's magic.
There's nothing like that.
It's absolute magic. Absolutely.
Yeah, it is. So if you're striving for that, just keep striving for that. And when you get it, realize what you did to achieve it. It's really cool.
Very good advice. Where can we find you next? Where can folks see you next? What's your next thing?
Well, working with Barrie and working, I'm doing a little gig at Caesar's Palace in Vegas called CinemaCon, I've heard. It's basically a corporate event for the film industry.
Sure.
And, I do various corporate events and Barrie Manilow in Vegas. And, we'll see how much longer Barrie can do it. And then I'm open to suggestions. When Barrie decides he doesn't want to do it anymore, I'm looking to you to fix me up with some youngish or middle-aged artist that I would be suited for,
That sounds perfect. Very cool.
There you go.
Very good, my friend. Thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your experiences. It's really
thanks again for having me. Thanks for having me.
I mean, Ken, seriously, your career is legendary. The things you've accomplished are phenomenal. And again, I'm glad. Thank you for the time to be able to capture your thoughts and your memories here and your experiences. We'll have it forever on YouTube, and people can come and see it and then check in and see the right way to run through a 50-year career. You've done it like a champion, and you've left a lot of smiling faces across the world, doing these big shows. We very much appreciate you coming on and sharing your experiences with us. Thank you, sir.
And it was great seeing you again,
Thanks very much for having me. Great seeing you guys. Great seeing you, Bernie, and I look forward to trying one of your speakers one of these days, Bernie.
Hey, well, hopefully it'll be a big one.
He's got big ones, little ones, all the stuff in between.
All right.
Yeah, he's got good stuff. I highly recommend it.
Fantastic.
All right, Ken, thank you so much, my friend. You have a great night, sir. All right, buddy.
Thanks very much. You too. Take care.
You bet. You as well. So that was the great Ken Newman. You guys, really just a stellar career. He's worked for some of the biggest artists in the world, and he does it with class and precision. And he's really one of the most highly sought after guys in the game.
Yeah,
Bernie,
sure.
I have to thank you for coming in a pinch and doing the show with us. The truth is, Bern, I forget who's our next guest. I didn't write it down. It's been a really busy day. I'm not going to make any excuses. I screwed up. We have a great guest coming next week. You can trust me. It's I try to bring in interesting people for you guys to see every week, and I think we've been very lucky in doing that with our mission. And great guys like Ken coming on. So. Just trust us. Next week, we're going to be here. We're going to have a good guest. It's going to be lots of fun. So come and see us. We do this every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We do it for you. We do it because we love the game, and we hope that you enjoy what we do. Come and check us out. Until then,
let's go get creative.
Bern's going to go get creative. I'll watch from a distance so it doesn't get on me. And we'll see you again next week. Until then, behave, be well, and take good care of yourself. Good night.